Hello and welcome to Root Causes, the PKI and Security podcast, where a pair of industry veterans talk about all matters digital certificates in PKI. We are recording live in Atlanta. How you doing, Atlanta? And Jason and I are very excited to be joined again by our repeat guest, Chris McGrath. Chris, how are you doing today?
Even more wonderful than the first time.
So see our earlier episode with Chris if you want to have a good grounding in the evolving importance of PKI in your security resilience. And I think we were going to dive deeply into DORA and other new regulatory needs that are basically changing the landscape.
Chris, before you start, I want to set this up with the idea that our most popular episode was the mapping of certificate lifecycle management to NIST's Cybersecurity Framework 2.0.
That's true.
Believe it or not. And what that should tell all the salespeople here, whether you're an old veteran all the way to people who I've just met, I would like all of you to realize that what you're just about to hear right now from Chris is really important. The customers that, the people who are consumers of this technology are really, really now understanding that the biggest reason they need to consume this technology is because they have to, by regulation and for a lot of reasons. Chris, you know a lot about DORA. You know a lot about that whole regulatory framework. Let's start talking about it.
Yeah, as somebody who's recently been through DORA 2025, good luck to those who actually go through the process. This is not an easy process. But it's a fundamental regulatory process to go through because, as you said, this is a tangible process in which you physically have to go and map all of those data points in your business. And more importantly, you have to provide that business impact across all of that, which is a very different approach to what's been taken previously.
So in terms of what's important for the connection between, because I think, Tim, you and I will do a proper, mapping exercise just like we did with CSF 2.0.
I think we will in the future.
I think while we have Chris here, what we really should get into, though, is for the non-European audience, what's important for them to know because of the fact that the same things are going to be coming into North America and elsewhere.
Yeah, so I think the way to adopt is two things. The whole of the regulatory landscape is changing, right? And that is across the board, whether it's in APAC, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the US. And the adoption is a change in terms of your maturity, right? And that maturity will become, as I say, an audited process in which it's unlikely that you will be able to self-verify what you do. And that's a really important component part, okay? Most of the new regulations that will come into play will require an independent auditing process around your practices and what you're doing. So you can no longer sit and hide. If that doesn't come through directly from you, it's going to come and it's going to be enforced by the prime contractors that you're a supply chain of.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that incorporated into your ISO audit, incorporated into your SOC audit. Yeah. I don't know that you're going to get an independent audit. I think you're going to get an expanded audit that will cover that footprint as well.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll add is that I've already seen this happening, is large organizations are reviewing all of the vendor contracts they currently have in place based on the new regulations. And I think that's going to cause significant impact for a lot of organizations that haven't really thought this through properly. And so I think this is where there's an opportunity to assist before that comes into place.
So on the topic of things not having been through properly, one of the things that certainly Jason and I discover a lot when we talk to a lot of large organizations is they don't actually really have clarity on what certificates or what PKI they have deployed for a variety of reasons. And if I'm now going to have to prove to an auditor that I am covering the full footprint of my certificate activities in a certain way, and I don't actually know what they are, isn't that a little bit of a pickle?
It is, and I have to say, I'm not saying this because it's a Sectico product, but certainly what I would say is that the tools available in this process are critical, as you say. if you cannot stand up in front of an auditor and give your full online services and private services that you are certifying, I would say within 10 minutes, that auditor is going to consider that to be a failure.
Sure.
Chris, before Tim and I go off and do the episode where we get into the nitty-gritty of DORA and mapping it, I just want to talk about some of the control categories and how they broadly connect to what certificate lifecycle management is. And all I'm going to offer up is, you guys saw earlier today a chart that Tim and I had an episode, I think it's 128, Tim, all the way back, it's almost 6 years ago.
Yes, I've got all the numbers memorized, just like
unbelievable,
you do, Jason.
Unbelievable. Got no room for anything else. Yes, it's the pillars, the 5 pillars of certificate lifecycle management.
Yeah.
And what's great is that you guys can use that as you're thinking through mapping through any guidance that you're under. So if you're procuring this technology and you want to know what you're getting out of it and what you can check off inside of DORA or NIS2 or NIST CSF 2.0, these things can map directly to things like renewals and visibility.
Yeah.
Is that right, Chris?
You're correct, yeah. As you say, I think fundamentally is the 2 key parts I say is access management and data at rest protection. So that they are 2 absolute stipulated parts to that, which certificates are critical of from a renewal standpoint.
In terms of you've talked about DORA. I think you're now quoted as saying that it's very mature, very clear.
Yep.
I think I'd love to hear your take on the rest of the regulatory frameworks that are out there.
Yep. So I think the way that, certainly if I take it from a UK standpoint in Europe, we've had NIS2 now for a period of time, which again is maturing. I would simply say that, again, with like all of these regulatory requirements, you must remember something that's really important. They can be employed at a country level. And this is something I would say to every business outside of the US is, if you're in Europe, it is not a European-wide generic process. Every single enforcement can be done at the country level, okay? And so whilst we have NIS2, we have DORA 2025, in the UK we have CSR, which is one of the CSR bill, which is a new bill which has just come into play, which essentially is, again, a much more enforced regulatory requirement for businesses operating in the UK. If you're operating in the UK and you're in defense business-related opportunities, there is a new regulatory requirement coming in on how you are as a maturity on levels 1 to 3, okay? But I would say to any business that is operating outside of, say, certainly outside the US, is you need to check those core regulations and what the enforcement is at a country-by-country level, and that's something really important.
Chris, we used to think about regulatory environments, especially in North America, with regards to healthcare, finance, and everything else kind of trickles away, you know. I think you're talking about everybody now. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, is it doesn't matter where you sit in the supply chain, and because that's, you are essentially contractual. Go back to my point. Everything I sign with you as a business is a contract, and in that contract, you are promising me a provision of services. And if you look at DORA 2025, what it actually states now for all of your supply chain, especially in ICT, right? You now have to go back and look at all your service level agreements with those businesses, right? So having just gone through with one of the world's largest war risk insurers, they have had to go back to every single ICT element as a service and relook at that service provider to say, what are the individual SLAs that you are promising me, okay? In terms of response, in terms of downtime. So this is really critical, again, I think, to understand from that standpoint, is this now is reviewing that SLA trust and resilience.
Tim, I'm going to introduce the idea here. You and I always, sometimes in the middle of a podcast, try to figure out what the title of the podcast is going to be.
Yes, we do, a lot.
And I'm going to propose one, which is, this is the end of the Wild West.
Yeah.
Perhaps the end of the digital Wild West.
You got it.
All right, I love it. I love it. So thank you once again, Chris. Thank you so much.
Great to be here.
All right.
Thank you.
This has been Root Causes.